Hi, everyone, and welcome. This is episode 5 of Patient Stories, and today we have with us Miss Pamela. Hi, Miss Pamela.
Hello, thank you for having me, Amy.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're kind of a pro, and I'm a novice at this, so I'm sure this is going to show. But first, before we really get started in the meat of the questions, since we're going to spend the whole time talking about healthcare and sickness, tell me a little bit about what you do for fun. What do you enjoy? Tell me if you have a family, whatever you feel up to sharing, just let me know.
What do I do for fun now that I'm in Colorado? It's all about cannabis. So we do cannabis events and smoke as often as we can. And I like to paint faces on the side too. So it's a little hobby I have. And
Oh, that's
uh,
fun.
like outdoors and I like being outside. I love the ocean. So I really miss the ocean. I keep telling everybody that's the only thing that Colorado doesn't have that I need. So
Yeah, definitely. Understand that for sure. Now, are you married? Do you have any kids? Anything like that?
I'm not married. I give up that a long time ago. It seemed like most of my problems in life had to do with men in my past. So once I gave them up, it seemed like problems seemed to go away. It's been
Smooth
peaceful.
sailing.
Yeah. I do. I have 3 kids. I have a daughter in Mississippi. I have a son in Arkansas, and then I have my youngest daughter who lives here in Colorado. So she lives maybe a mile from me. So I get to see the babies pretty regularly.
Oh, I know that's important. Very, very
It
important.
is. She has been by my side. She was actually the only child I had left at home when I was diagnosed with cancer in Mississippi. So she got to see how sick chemo and radiation can really make somebody. So it was really hard on her trying to get through her senior year and try to take care of mom and get her to treatments. And so, yeah, it's a part of my life I wish she hadn't have had to have seen, but she endured it and got through it. And I think it made her stronger because of it. And
It did, and you know what? She'll be one of the most compassionate adults that anybody will meet. That's what I try to tell people, as they go through this about their kids. I'm like, these kids are going to grow up understanding, compassionate. They're going to be great caretakers. I mean, they really are. It's a hard road for our kids, but you know what? Like you said, they're going to be better people. They're going to be stronger people. And that's what it's about.
I've heard
So,
so many people say that, I got sick and my family wasn't there for me or somebody wasn't there for them. And I try to explain to them until you actually go through a sickness yourself, a person doesn't understand what another person is going through or what they're experiencing. So I try not to put much weight on people if they don't come around when I'm sick or because my mom went through the very same thing that I went through, the same cancer, some of the same surgeries. And it was really after she passed and I started going through it. I look back and I was like, wow, my mom went through this. I didn't have a clue what
mhm.
she was going through until it was myself. So it gave me a better understanding of why people don't come around. And it's not that they don't care, it's like a lot of them just don't understand. So
And it's too much for a lot of people.
yeah,
If they're not around it and they're not experienced, it is a lot to
it was
handle.
almost too much for me and it was happening to me. So I can imagine what the people around me thought.
I can only imagine. Bless your heart. Well, we started off there with talking about cancer. So let's spend some time. Why don't you tell me about your diagnoses? I know you have several diagnoses. Tell me what all you've had, what you've beat, and we'll go from there.
My original diagnosis was in 2010. I started chemo and radiation at Anderson's Cancer Center in Meridian, Mississippi, because that's what you do in Mississippi when you're diagnosed with cancer. You take treatments, and so that's what I done. My first 4 weeks in radiation, they had to stop radiation because I had been over radiated, and I had second-degree burns from the radiation. And I was so sick from the chemo that I actually told myself when it was all said and done, I would do chemo again, but I wouldn't do radiation again. And then when I found out how much the radiation had just destroyed my body, I found out I finished my treatments in April
Hmm.
of 2021. And in November, actually, on Thanksgiving, I stayed up all night like we do in Mississippi preparing that Thanksgiving dinner. And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
was so sick Thanksgiving that I couldn't eat. My stomach hurt me so bad. And starting on Thanksgiving of 2021, I went to emergency rooms. I went to ERs, begging doctors, something is wrong, please. I'm hurting so bad.
Help.
Um, I actually had one hospital to call my family in and tell them that there was nothing wrong with me. They thought that I was after pain medication. I lost 40 pounds in 4 months. And I finally, on my birthday on March the 7th, went to Anderson's Hospital, just hoping if I go to a new hospital somewhere different, that doctor will find what's wrong. And I did go. When I got there, I was so sick. The doctor said I was probably within 24 hours of passing away at that point. Um,
Oh, wow.
when they took me into surgery, they done exploratory surgery because even there, nothing was showing up on the test. But I was so sick, they knew something was wrong. So they took me into surgery. I come out of surgery, found out I had pancreatitis, I had gallbladder. Um, I'd had kidney stones or gallbladders or gallstones, that's what it was, that had fell over into my pancreas, caused the pancreatitis. But the most important thing was my colon had been tearing, and everything that I had been eating for 4 months had been going into my system. So I had gangrene of all my organs. They literally took my organs out, and when I read my medical records, in my mind, I saw somebody skinning a deer and taking their organs out and just pressure washing the inside and putting those organs back in.
Oh,
I woke up
gosh.
in ICU with my stomach not even sewed closed. I was left open. It was the first time I had ever seen an injury like that to anybody, let alone myself. So it just put me in a state where I wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not. For 3 months, I stayed at Anderson's Hospital.
Wow.
The doctors were so good. There's a doctor over there, Dr. Dennison. He does colon surgeries and stuff. He's had me in surgery so many times. There's 5 residents he has on his team. I've had all 5 of those residents in the operating room at one time with me. I was so scared during that time. I was actually Googling, laying in the hospital bed, Googling if you could live without your colon or not. Because every few days my colon would tear again and I would be back in surgery. And it was like my doctor there said, I have never had a patient that has the luck that you have. Your luck is so bad. And it just, for a year and a half, it was surgery after surgery after surgery. And I remember the day I woke up with an ostomy bag on. And I saw my mom go through that. And that was the one thing that I never wanted. And it hurt my heart so bad to wake up with that. And, but I'm not a quitter. And I don't believe in giving up. I don't
Obviously.
believe the words "it can't be done." I don't believe in those words. You find the one that can do it, that will give you, that says I can. I went through
Absolutely.
a lot of no we can'ts before I found some yes we cans. And actually, I went through hyperbaric chambers. I got through like the colon surgeries. And I actually, it was my goal to have that ostomy bag off of me.
Hmm.
So for Christmas one year, I begged Dr. Dennison to please take this bag off of me. And well, it was actually 3 months before Christmas. So he said, okay, we'll try. He took it off. It lasted 4 days and it failed. And I woke up with a ileostomy bag, which is like an ostomy bag, but just on the other side of your stomach.
Hmm.
And I was so discouraged. My doctor saw that it was just like, I don't want to move on if this is the way life's going to be. So in December for Christmas, that's what I asked my doctors for, was another reversal to try to get rid of that, and it held up.
Oh,
So
that's so
I
good.
got rid of all the bags, and it was like I had lost so much weight because now I don't I don't get the nutrients from food because they did take so much of my colon out.
Right.
And so it was like the doctors were telling me, you're good now. All you got to do is get that weight back. And so I go home and I'm thinking, okay, get the weight back. And within a couple of weeks of this surgery to like end all my colon surgeries, I had a major arterial blood clot. And it was my first arterial blood clot ever. And the pain associated with it was out of this world. And so I went to Baptist Hospital in Jackson, Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where my vascular surgery started. And I actually went through a procedure at the Baptist Hospital, and they put a piece on an artery while they were removing a blood clot that had a super bug Mercer staph on it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
of course, I don't know it until it's made itself clear in my body that that's what it is. And I was discharged from the Baptist Hospital with a fully infected leg, them telling me there was nothing else they could do for me. And they sent me home to die. That's what they done. My home health nurse came the next morning and she saw me and she's like, please, you've got to go get some help or you're going to lay here and die. I was running fever. I couldn't stand for a sheet to touch my leg. I left and I told her, I'll go back to the hospital. I don't have a problem seeking, help, but
Mm-hmm.
I won't go back to the hospital that just sent me home like this.
Right. Absolutely.
And let me tell you, it is almost impossible to find a doctor to take over a care when another doctor has left you in this situation.
I know that for a fact.
So I went back to the only thing I knew, which was Anderson's Hospital at the time, and went in through the ER and told them, if you'll send me here, help me. I need help.
Mm-hmm.
They took me into surgery. I spent 22 weeks total at Anderson's, 6 weeks actually in the hospital, and then 16 weeks in their rehab, trying to save my leg.
Yeah. And gain strength and learn to walk again. And
It was so infected. I had to go through that. And then I had to because of that, I had a permanent drop foot. And I had it for 7 years. But I left, when the day I left the hospital, the rehab, I told my doctors, they're like, my wound on my leg had stitches, staples, stitches, staples. And
ooh,
I was looking at the doctor and I was like, I need you to take the staples out. And he's like, but it's not time for the staples to come out. And I said, when I leave today, I'm going to Colorado. Um, I feel like there's nothing more for me here. And for me to save my life, it's time for me to make that decision and it's time for me to go. And the doctor told me, oh no, you can't do that because you don't realize what you're doing. You'll clot up before you get there. Because I was driving up here and they knew that. And he told me, you will clot before you get there. It's against, I'm telling you, go. But I had my heart set on it and I was determined I was coming.
mm-hmm.
So I got him to take the staples out that day before I left the hospital because I didn't want to have to get a doctor up here to do it once I got here. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like, get that done and I can take the stitches out if I have to, but let's get
Absolutely.
me that far. And I left immediately. As soon as I left the hospital, I went home, loaded my car down with everything I could pack in it, and I came to Colorado. And the day I got here, the doctors in Mississippi were right. I clotted up on the way up here. I clotted from my neck all the way down behind my knee. And
Oh my
So the day
stars.
I arrived in Colorado, I spent 25 and a half hours in surgery at the University of Colorado. And the look on their face when I come in through the ER holler, I've got a blood clot. I need a surgeon. And they're like, what makes you think it's a blood clot? And I'm like, I've
Uh,
only had 48 of them. Please get me a surgeon. And so I met an outstanding surgeon here from Russia. She made me a case study when I got here, and she presented my case to five of the top doctors in the world.
oh, that's so
And
cool.
they really they were concerned about my weight. I weighed 98 pounds when I arrived in Colorado, and I'm 5'10", so 98 pounds does not look good on me at
No,
all.
that is
I
too,
was
too thin. Way
I
too thin.
actually have a picture like the first month or two I was here, and you could literally see every rib on me. I was just bones, and the doctors here were really concerned about my weight, and they're like, Pamela, if your cancer comes back, you don't stand a chance at 98 pounds.
You don't have
And
anything to fight with.
right, and so when we started, like my vascular surgeon, while I was in the hospital, put me on Marinol,
Hmm.
and it increased my appetite some. And I was in the hospital for several weeks, but when I get out of the hospital, I go to get a prescription of Marinol filled, and my insurance company says, "Oh no, yeah, we're not going to do that."
We're not paying
And,
for that.
right, and so I go back to my doctor, and I'm like, I got all of my medicine filled except one, and I told her the Marinol my insurance will not pay for. And since I had quit taking it since leaving the hospital, my appetite had decreased again. And
Um,
she's like, Pamela, she said, I want you to go to a medical doctor and get you a marijuana card.
mhm.
And she said, and when you get that card, she said, I want you to go to a dispensary and talk to some people there and find something to help you with your appetite. Girl, the first time I walked into a dispensary, I felt like I was going to jail. There was like a security guard at the door that I just knew was the police, and it was, it was, yeah, it's quite different for somebody that's been isolated like we have in Mississippi.
I know it has to be. I've never been in a dispensary, so I'm not sure, but I've heard that from a lot of different people that it's just like it's
Culture
almost
shock.
overstimulation. You're like, oh my gosh, there's so much to look at. Like, am I okay? Is it safe? Like, it's funny.
But I went in and I actually met a girl at a dispensary right after I got up here that was really good at explaining dosages to me and edibles and flour and the difference and how you consume it. And then I found out that there's a thing called FECO, or full extract cannabis oil, that's what all the cancer patients and all the sick people really need. And I'm
Yes,
like,
ma'am.
okay, well, now I got to find who makes that and where to get it. So, um, there was a couple of big names here in Colorado that, big names, them because of their big names. So I
Exactly.
reached out to one of these big names, and I also found out that with big names comes big prices.
Yes, it
And
does.
there was no compassion with these big names. It was all adding the bank account. So that's when I realized that Colorado had a problem. They had sick people here that couldn't get medicine. And that bothered me. And it really bothered me at the time because I was really sick and I needed it. And
Yeah,
or at least I wanted the chance to try it.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it took me probably a month of diligently searching and reaching out to everybody that I could make contact with here. And I kind of caught somebody talking to somebody else on Facebook and kind of was nosing in their conversation. And then I reached out to one of the people and I'm like, are you bringing medicine to an event? And they're like, no, but I can. And I'm like, oh, you make medicine? And they're like, yeah. And this person turned out to be Andy Hall with the Hope Grows Foundation.
Oh,
And
that's so
um,
cool.
he met me at Canazar, which was my first event ever in the state of Colorado. But we thought that was the best place to meet up and for him to give me some medicine. And the day he met me, he was like, Pamela, walk over here to my truck. And I got the medicine in the truck, and I looked at him and I said, I can't walk that far, Andy. And he's like, it's like right there, Pamela. And I went, I can't walk that far. So he walked over to his truck, got the medicine out, and I started taking the medicine. And my next question was, how much do I take?
Mm-hmm.
Well, start with this and work your way. And I didn't like that answer. It's
No,
like, I need to know how much kills cancer, how much is going to increase my appetite. I need to know these things, but nobody in Colorado, nobody could seem to tell me that.
that's
And
crazy to me.
and so the first month I was here for an amputation of my leg, and I started Andy's medicine. And when I went for my pre-op for the amputation, my surgeon, she come right up to me, like pulled her chair right up in front of me, and she said, Pamela, what have you done different since I saw you a month ago? And I went, I started taking a cannabis regimen. And she said, a what? And I was like, some kind of cannabis regimen. And she said, what is that? And I was like, I really don't know. That's the only thing I've done different. And she's like, she said, can you bring it to me and let me test it? And I'm like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought it to her. She tested it. Actually came back and told me the myrrh in my medicine can affect my INR reading, which is my blood thickness. So I was really impressed that she could tell me that. But never had her tell me stop taking it. She actually told me don't stop taking it because it was doing what she couldn't do as a doctor.
Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible?
And so, like I say, I was wondering about dosaging. And so, since nobody in Colorado could tell me how much to take, there was two names that I thought pretty sure if I could get in touch with these two guys, maybe one of them could tell me. So actually, I got in touch with both of these guys, which is Rick Simpson and Dr. Robert Melamede. And through talking to them, they both told me the exact same dosaging to fight cancer. It was like 1,000 milligrams. You need that daily. And so I called Andy and I'm like, I need 1,000 milligrams a day. And he's like, Pamela, do you realize how much that is? And I'm like, I know, but that's what they say I need. And I remember the first time I took 1,000 milligrams, I was asleep probably within 20 minutes of taking it. It was like time to go to bed. And then the next day, it didn't really affect me as much. It was like I felt a little bit off of it. But by the third day, it was like my body was accepting it. And it seems like the medicine makes everything, if you max the endocannabinoid system out,
Correct.
it's like your body gets better.
By itself, the way it's supposed to, the way it's designed to work.
When I first got here, he was probably a good 100 pounds overweight, and here I was so skinny. And we both take the same medicine. He's actually lost weight on the medicine, and I've gained 40 pounds now since I've been in Colorado. So
good.
Yeah, I can tell.
That makes me happy for sure.
Well, when you don't have any weight on you, you don't feel good. When you have no muscle, you have no energy. It's just, it's a bad feeling all the way around. So, but yeah, I'm healthy again now. In 2016, I had a PET scan come back here at the University Hospital. My cancer doctor here, he was like, Pamela, we're showing that you have cancer in your right thyroid, in your lung, in a stent in my stomach, and in my leg. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Okay. And you got to remember I was over radiated already. So the university hospital told me that I am no longer a candidate for radiation if my cancer is present. So I asked him then, I was like, because as far as I'm concerned, the University of Colorado Hospital is it does rank number one in the world in so many of its areas. And so it's like, this is just like life saving up here for me to find this hospital. And for that hospital to say, well, we can't treat you anymore when it comes to cancer. And I'm like, I panicked. And I'm like, you're the
Yeah,
best. You're the best.
right.
How can you not do this? And I said, so what happens to cancer patients when you can't treat them anymore?
Absolutely.
And he says, Pamela, we send you to the Mayo Clinic. And I'm not quite ready for that. So I was like, will you give me 3 weeks to go home and ramp up my cannabis regimen and check me again at the end of the month? And if the cancer is still there, I guess I'll pack a bag, but at least give me a chance.
That's so cool.
And he said, Pamela, go home and do your thing. I'll see you at the end of the month. I came home. I called Andy. I actually called him in the hospital crying, and I'm like, how can I have cancer when I take cannabis? And he's like, Pamela, have you been taking it like you're supposed to? And I'm like, no. So I got back on it for 1,000 milligrams a day for 3 weeks. I went back and repeated my PET scan, and I had no cancer in 3 weeks when the PET scan came back. So me and my doctor, we sat in his office. We kind of made our little digs about cannabis, and he's like, he said, well, he actually said, you must not have wanted to go to the Mayo, Pamela. And I was like, I really didn't.
I was that desperate. I did not want to go.
But I have shown so many times that it works, and I've got test results to prove it, and I've got doctors that stand behind me. Um, I won't mention his name because he is still practicing, but I have a doctor that actually came to me, and he has a patient that is a cigarette smoker. And I used to be a cigarette smoker, and I quit after 30 something years. And
Good
he's
for
like,
you.
how'd you do that? And I was like, cannabis helps a lot of things. And so he comes to me in the office one day and he goes, I've got this patient that won't quit smoking. Will cannabis help her quit smoking? And I was like, it made me feel so good. I was like, yes, a doctor's asking me about cannabis. So yeah, but it's like,
Cannabis can do so much.
and it leaves them open for other patients when they see stuff like this. It's
Yes,
like, maybe this will help, because, you know, we kind of criticize doctors, but doctors have never even been taught about the endocannabinoid system. They don't even know that system's in our body. So
exactly.
it's like, it's our time to educate them and let them
Absolutely.
know. And so that it has done my heart good getting to see test results come back negative after I come home and take cannabis, and they know I take cannabis. So
That's got to be
makes me
just
feel good.
an amazing feeling for sure. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about is you told me how many surgeries you've had. I want you to tell everybody here, how many surgeries have you had in your lifetime?
On August the 25th was my 115th surgery.
115 different surgeries that
And
you.
that's just since I was diagnosed with cancer. That's not the surgeries I had before then. And that's not even counting procedures I've had where I wasn't put to sleep. This was 115 surgeries where I was put to sleep.
You are a walking miracle. Like it's making me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Like to know, like I know that this plan is capable, but to see and to talk to real life people that it's changed your life. Like you wouldn't be here if it weren't for this plan. And that is incredible. And when you think about that being withheld from people, it just lights a fire in you to say, what can we do to change this to get access for these people that need it? My dad went through chemo. It's horrible. I don't wish it on anybody. If we're going to do that and radiation where you had your skin burned, second-degree burn, can we not try a plant? I mean, really, can we not?
Right. I actually, a good friend of mine, his name was Wayward Bell. He was a big advocate.
Yes, ma'am. I
Bill
know
is
his
known
name.
all over this world for his advocacy, but about 2 months ago, Bill was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And he called me one morning and he's like, Pamela, my chest hurts a little bit. And I'm like, Bill, you're 70 years old. You better go to the doctor,
I can't help you.
and it's like, chest, I'm thinking heart, and
Right.
so he goes to the VA and he called me and he says, like that day, and he said, they said I've got lung cancer. And I was like, Bill, they can't tell you that. They haven't even checked yet, you know?
Right.
And it's like an x-ray. They can't just say that. And we waited 2 weeks to get the results back, and it come back that, of course, he had stage 4 lung cancer. And some people, I tell people this too. You got to have a strong mind when a
Yes.
doctor tells you that you're gonna die. If you could die in the next few months from this, you've got to be stronger than that disease. You've got to be stronger than the cancer. And
Absolutely. I agree
some
with that.
people aren't. And Bill took it so hard. It's like he just like quit eating. And I got to watch my best friend just give up. And I also got to watch the VA take his cannabis from him. So that's a whole nother issue in itself in a legal state. But, um,
That infuriates me
and
too.
I was actually threatened with a federal felony if I got caught bringing it in to him. So I got to watch my best friend lay there and die. And he's the biggest cannabis activist in the world. And he wanted to leave this world, using his cannabis. But somebody that fought for this country for us to have the freedoms that we have today was denied in the
That's
very end of his life. And so I'm hoping some representatives here in the state of Colorado will work with me. We do have a medicine here in Colorado that Big Pharma has picked up, and actually, it is the real thing. It is called Epidiolex. It
hmm
is full extract cannabis oil. It is not synthesized. It is the real thing. It's extremely expensive. I've heard it's like $3,600 a month for it.
good
Um, but
gosh.
they offered Bill him Marinol in the hospital, and so my thing to the doctor was, if you can offer him Marinol, you can offer him Epidiolex. Give him Epidiolex, and you won't hear me say nothing else. And
Uh-huh.
she informed me that he didn't qualify. So
I,
I get dying of cancer doesn't qualify. She gave me two qualifying conditions that did, and it was like conditions that I'd never heard of. But that is something I will be working on in the next legislative session to get a more qualifying conditions added to patients to
yes.
get Epidiolex, because I didn't even know that. And a lot of things here in Colorado, us that go to the Capitol and fight for all these laws and our rights, and we don't know of a lot of things until we're faced with things like this. And so now it's like Bill left me a mission to
Yes, he
make
did.
sure nobody else has to be denied what the life saving medicines they need. And his doctor was proud of it in the hospital. I actually found a police report where they confiscated his gummies and his THC syringe in the hospital. And the doctor confronted me about it, and she said, I took that. And I looked at her and I said, You sure did. And now he's dying. And she didn't really have nothing to say about that. But, even in a legal state, it is still not completely legal.
And I have a friend that they moved to Colorado to save their daughter's life. She was 5, and the hospital basically sent her home to die. She's the seizure kid. She's seized all day, every day, and it's just kind of incredible, the doctors, the attitude. It blows me away sometimes. This medicine saved this child's life, but because we can't try cannabis, we're gonna let her die. That's our solution. That's the plan. No, we're fixing that. We're changing that. No, that's not okay.
Last year, um, they told me that I had lung cancer and that my lungs were in such bad shape that I would be dead within 3 months.
Mm,
And I told my doctor, I don't feel dead. I don't feel like I'm dying. I'm
Right.
not showing any symptoms. So I questioned that diagnosis. And I was sent to another doctor that this same cancer doctor sent me to for like our annual pap smear.
Right.
And so I go in, and I don't know this doctor from Adam's house yet. It's just a new doctor they sent me to. And he meets me in a conference room at a conference table. And he's like, Miss Jacobson, I've seen your lung scans. There's no need in putting yourself through this pap smear. You're just putting yourself through unneeded tests. He said, why don't you go home and spend the next 3 months with your family, because that's about all you have left. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, but I don't buy that, because I'm a cannabis patient and I'll go home and do my cannabis regimen and I'll get back with you. And he looked at me and he goes, it's time for you to be real with yourself. If cannabis really killed cancer, you wouldn't be sitting here now with it, would you? And let me tell you, that doctor shut me up there for just a second, because at that point, I didn't know if I had cancer or not, because nobody
Right.
had actually done a biopsy to check. And so I gave in and left the doctor's office crying, called other doctors, and I'm like, they just told me I got 3 months to live. And of course, my vascular surgeon didn't buy it. They're like, who told you that? And but anyway, I let this doctor go in and do a lung biopsy on me. I promise you, I will never do that again. But I let her do this, and it came back as leftover pneumonia and fibrosis. And I saw the same thing happen to my mom when she was going through it. Um, and when it didn't come back, the cancer that they thought it was, this doctor wanted to give me 3 months and do it again just to make sure. And I told her, no, you had one chance.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting myself through that again. And actually, in March of this year, I finally went back to my little cancer doctor over here that had me dead by that Christmas. And I saw him, and he repeated my lung scan, and he come in and he said, Pamela, your lungs look better than they do since the day you've arrived in Colorado. And I went, so I'm not going to be dead in 3 months? And he didn't even entertain the conversation. It was like, and so, yeah, I love proving to doctors that it doesn't mean anything what you say. I'll come back in a few months and prove you wrong. And it seems like every time a doctor gives me bad news, I come home and I take that 1,000 milligrams a day, and I'll do it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll go back for a follow up, and they're like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "Yeah, cannabis happened. That's what happened." So, but this doctor that told me I'd be dead in 3 months, I got to researching him and found out he was from Alabama. So I was like, I told my doctors up here, I left the South for a reason. I'll a Southern doctor in Colorado.
Yes, honey. Yes.
I was like, they are
Oh,
not on board with cannabis.
they really, I've been blessed. My pain physician is the one that told me about cannabis and cannabis being used for pain and put me on Marinol. Same thing. Insurance doesn't pay for it. Yada yada yada. It's almost $200 out of pocket just for that for me a month. Um, but it's just crazy. They just don't. Most physicians won't even have the discussion. They won't talk to you about it. I'm going to talk to every one of them. Like, hey, my stomach doctor, guess what? The reason
You
I
know
didn't
why
use
a lot of them don't want to talk about it? Because you won't need those prescription pills anymore. You
money.
need a little thing like holy anointing oil. I
Yes.
use this every day. And we call it holy anointing oil. We actually had a discrepancy when we were trying to name it. And because I'm from the South, I got my little religious kicks. And so my boss had asked me about it. He's like, what do you think about calling it holy anointing oil? And I'm like, well, the way I look at it, if you take a recipe book down and you make chocolate chip cookies, when you get through, you don't call them oatmeal cookies, do you?
Right.
He's like, yeah. And I said, everything that is in this, he got the recipe straight from the Bible.
Mhm.
So all the ingredients come from the Bible. I said it's holy anointing oil if there was ever holy anointing oil. So that's what we named it. I apply it every morning. I apply it every evening, and I'm good. I don't have to take opioids. That was another thing Mississippi done for me while I was there. They put me on fentanyl, and I learned a big lesson about fentanyl when I was in Mississippi watching my mom.
Mm-hmm.
100 milligrams is as strong as a fentanyl patch as they make.
Mm-hmm.
And once you break through that and you experience pain, there is no other medicine in this world that will conquer that pain. Fentanyl is as strong as it comes. And I
Right.
watched my mom hurt knowing that there was nothing else that they could do for her. So when I moved to Colorado, I was on a 75 milligram patch around the clock, 24/7. I didn't
Wow.
have any, like, there wasn't much pain.
Right.
I was so sick. I couldn't go outside and get hot. I couldn't take a hot bath. I couldn't get in a hot tub. Um, I was so limited.
Yeah.
And I told myself when I got up here and the cannabis started showing me what all it could do, and I'm like, wonder if I can come off this nasty fentanyl. So I go to my doctors up here and I'm like, I would like to try to come off the fentanyl. And they're like, girl, when they put patients on that, they put them on it for a reason. It's not to come off of it. And I'm like, but I want to come off of it. And I remember the first month I didn't ask my doctor for any. I was like, I don't want any. And he's like, well, I'll see you in 6 days, Pamela. And I was like, I come every month. Why would I come back in 6 days? And he goes, oh, trust you me. Within 6 days, you're going to be crawling through that door begging for pain medicine. Um, I'm glad to say that I've been off of fentanyl 4.5 years now.
That
And I
is
got,
amazing.
and like when I have surgery and stuff, I came home from surgery on the 25th. I had I had a foot drop surgery in February and was over it, and somebody stepped on my foot and just messed it all up again. So
Oh
I couldn't
no.
walk with
Oh no, no,
pins in
no.
all my toes, and it was like, what am I gonna do? But I came home the day from of surgery. I got out of surgery, came home, and I took this and I just squeezed it between my toes and let it run down in my cast and stuff. And I'm like, it was immediate relief. But I didn't know that they had cut the back of my toes, and I had put all that oil in that, right?
Whoops.
So, if I mess up, I'll say I messed up. So I call my doctor and I'm like, what is the dip? Because I was reading in my surgery papers where he cut the dip. And he said, it's the little area under your toes, Pamela. And I went, oh, I just soaked it with oil. And he's like, you done what? So he brings me back in and like to look at it to make sure it's not trying to get infected or anything. And he actually laughed and he said, what kind of oil did you put on there? And he said, I think it done it some good, Pamela. So we got to my stitches come out yesterday, which I had another week before they were supposed to come out. They took the pins out yesterday. Everything come out yesterday. So I was like, yes. So I'm on the road to recovery now.
I'm so glad. And just so everyone knows, this sweet lady was in surgery a week ago and she has been bugging me nonstop. I'm ready to tell my story. I'm ready to tell my story. I'm like, honey, you've just got like your toes cut on. Like, take some time, recover. And she wouldn't do it. She is so when you speak of mental toughness, like you are a whole other level of mental toughness that people I don't even think some people are capable of reaching that. That's incredible. I it blows me away.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping on. Thank you for your fight to help others have this medicine. Like to change doctors' minds, to have those hard conversations. Thank you for everything that you do to make sure that nobody else has to endure it. And I'm kind of curious, is FECO not available for purchase at a normal dispensary in Colorado? I'm not really sure how it works. I've never been to one, so
Well, we have med and we have rec too. So,
okay.
but yes, you can buy it. It's like, I think somebody told me it's $25 a gram,
Wow.
which is not very much. And that's why it was so important to have foundations like the Hope Grows Foundation because I have seen them give away more medicine in the state of Colorado um, to kids and that and he has a weakness for kids, so I keep bringing up kids. But kids can't help it if their parents don't have the money to buy life-saving medicines that they need, and
Absolutely.
he really looks at that. So kids are a soft place in his heart, and we have actually seen kids turned away because from medicine because they didn't have cash in their hand, and call us and us meet them with seizing kids in the car and help those kids. And um, we had
That
one
takes
come
my
from
breath away.
we had one child that came from Alabama up here, and just I remember the night I met him. He just he won my heart over. He was 16 years old, and um, he was pretty much eat up with cancer when he got here, and we put him on the regimen and got him started on the regimen, and he got to experience so much more in life that he wouldn't have got to experience without his mom bringing him here. But some people wait too late to come, um, and it's sad. We can't help everybody that comes. And another mistake people make, a lot of people come here and they get better and they go home. And when they go home, they can't access the medicine. And one thing
Yes.
that I have found since using the medicine, and I've been on it for 6 years now.
Hmm.
So once you start taking the medicine, you never really stop taking the medicine.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
you're feeding that endocannabinoid system and your
right.
body
So
gets used to that. That's science. That's not
in that, right.
opinion.
So these people that come here and get it and get better, and then they go home and they never take it again. Usually within 6 months, we see those people back here. But it seems like when they come back, they're sicker and they're worse off the second go round than they were the first time.
Right.
And so I try to make sure that me myself, I take 400 milligrams a day maintenance dosage.
Hmm.
Um, it's in my wishes, my end of life wishes at the hospital, that if I can't speak to you, that I don't care who gives it to me, as long as I get 400 milligrams a day of Andy's oil. And it's put down like that. It's got to be Andy's oil, or it's like it may not work. So,
Yes.
but
Yes.
yeah, it's little things like that. Like since my friend Bill passed away, it's like you think about things like that, your end of days, and um, are the nurses, nurses aren't allowed to give it to you. So who's going to give you your medicine? And who's going to stand up for your right to use that medicine in those final days? That's what a lot of people really need to think about when
Yes.
that time starts getting close. I've thought about it, and it's like, and that's why I tried to be there for Bill. I tried to do everything for Bill that I would have wanted somebody to have done for me if that would have been me. And so I just really hope I have that person there with me when my time comes. And the university, they have been so good. Um, I'm the one person in Colorado that has went to the hospital and smoked a joint in front of my nurse. Yes, I have done it. I'm proud to say I've done it, and I'll do it again.
We need to
But
get you some cookies. That's amazing.
but they know me. If you got me in there 2 or 3 days, and I start asking to go outside, they know what I'm going outside for. So it's just I've educated the doctors so much, and it's like they've learned so much from me, and it's like I've had people tell me, you think you might need
Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, switching gears for just a little bit, I want to talk to you about leaving Mississippi. What did it take to come to that decision? Obviously, you said earlier that you were on the verge of death. Like you didn't necessarily have a choice. You had to leave. Talk to me about packing up your belongings and leaving and not being able to come back. You don't have to if you don't want to. Let me say that.
Yeah, that's hard. I was 45 years old. Mississippi was all I knew. My family's there. My life was there. My home was there. And I had to make a decision. Do I want my family here to, because all I was doing was letting them watch me die. It's not that I was even any good to my family anymore. I couldn't do anything with them or participate in anything. I was spending all my time in the hospital.
Right.
And it was like, I can either stay here and die like I'm doing, or I can try. And I wasn't ready to die at 45, and I was starting to have grandbabies. And it's like, if I don't go, I'll never know, because mom had the same cancer that I had. And of course, we talked about it, and she was like, it wasn't legal. And so we wasn't really even talking about it. So you gotta be careful even who will hear you talk about it. And so it was nothing that she would ever, like, that she done for herself.
Hmm.
And so when it happened to me, I was actually a part of a group on Facebook here while I was in Mississippi called American Medical Refugees. And
I'm
it's
so glad
people
you
that have
left.
left their home state and come to Colorado and to access the medicine. And so I like started talking to this group and realized there's a lot of people that they're not coming here because they got the money or they know what they're coming for. They're coming here to, it's their last resort.
Last straw.
And it was mine. And it was like, I'm so thankful for Colorado every day that they had the people here to stand their ground and stand up rights of patients, and that understood the benefits of cannabis long before any of us other states did,
Yes.
and gave us access to that. And then we find out that there's a patent that the government owns, and it's patent 6630507. And I'm
Yes,
like,
ma'am.
cannabis patent? And I'm like, that the
Yes.
government owns?
Yes, ma'am.
That says it has been like healing medical benefits? And I'm
Yes.
like, but no, the government says it's bad. How can they have a patent and still say it's bad? So some people here in Colorado started the Talk to the Hand campaign, and it's for the DEA to talk to the hand because we're tired of listening to them lie to us. And
Yes.
it's either acknowledge that cannabis has medical benefit,
Hmm.
or drop your patent and that it does, because you can't do both.
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
and it's time for them to be held accountable. And we've got a people here like Alexis Bortel that sued Jeff Sessions. And so there's people here that are not scared of lawmakers, and they don't mind standing their ground. And I love being a part of this community that will go to the Capitol and we'll take the governor head on if we don't like what he's doing. And like recently we just had a bill that went into, well, it's not in law yet, but the governor has signed it. It was introduced in March, like at midnight in the middle of the night,
I
and
hate
we
that.
really didn't get a seat at the table for this. But it is HB 1317. It limits the THC potency in the state of Colorado. And when you limit THC potency, then you are affecting patients 100%, because any patient that is on FECO is already above the THC potency limit.
Absolutely.
So
And
they made us criminals when they put this law into effect. We've had medical doctors, like medical marijuana doctors in the state of Colorado, that says they will not write any more medical cards under this new law because it's asking them to prescribe the medicine instead of, and we all know because of federal laws they can't do that. So
correct.
it's now, instead of buying a gram of shatter, we'll buy a twelfth of a gram. And I don't care how you look at it, that's 12 more packaging, that's more money that's is going to cost the patients for
Yes.
the same amount that we were before. So we're
Yes.
all really concerned about this new bill. We were told that it would be amended and altered before he signed it, but let me tell you, nothing was amended, nothing was altered before that bill was signed. So there's a lot of people getting ready to leave Colorado now because of this new bill, because it affects patients completely. It's almost doing away with our medical program here.
The reason that I got into cannabis advocacy is the little girl I was speaking about earlier that moved to Colorado to gain access to THC oil, and her mom has kind of told me that, this isn't it. This bill was coming up, that it was being introduced, and that it stood a chance of interrupting them getting their medical THC. And where do you go? When Colorado can't help you, do you go to Oregon? Do you go to Washington State? Like, where in the United States is safe for these patients? It's heartbreaking.
Actually, truthfully, it seems like maybe Oklahoma has the best cannabis laws right now. To date, as far as where patients can go, and they've got cheaper like medical cards. They're not trying to rake the patient over the coal to get their card and get the medicine they need, it seems like. But I've seen other states where, um, just for instance, Florida. That's where my heart is. I would love to be in Florida, but their cannabis laws are so messed up, and even the taxes on them are outrageous. I'm like, who can go down there and afford to pay those prices?
Yes.
Actually, we're paying here in Colorado with a medical card. I'm paying about $60 out the door for an ounce of flour. In Vegas, it's 125 a quarter out the door. So it depends on where you
That's
go as in Colorado seems to have a lot of people on prices, but with this new laws going into effect, I look for that to change too.
yeah. I know there's so much work that you have done in advocacy. So I kind of want your opinion. What would you tell legislators here in Mississippi? If you had the opportunity, if you had one of them sitting in front of you, what would you tell them? How would you? Your story doesn't take much convincing, so I feel like all you would have to do is sit down and tell your story, and you could win anybody over. But what would you tell them specifically about how you felt about leaving the state, about leaving your family behind, that they are keeping families from wellness, from life. So how would you kind of what would you say if you could say anything to them?
Um, I know how as the legislators are there, so I know they're not going to like what I'm fixing to say. But I'm going to say it because it's the truth. I'm all about the truth and speaking the
Yes,
truth.
ma'am.
So, if you don't want me saying something, I'm probably not probably the best person to reach out to. But once I arrived in Colorado, um, people followed me on Facebook. They watched my journey.
Mhm.
They saw that I got better. I've had state representatives reach out to me since I've been in Colorado wanting meds, and it broke my heart because what makes them better than the average person in Mississippi? What makes them better than I was in Mississippi? I couldn't get it in Mississippi. So what makes you think that you can call me now that I have had to leave my state, leave everything that I have? What makes you think that you have the nerve to call me and say you need medicine?
Yes.
It just,
Yes.
and that's why your legislatures and your senators, they're not worried about you
Nope.
because they know they've got access to get it. And do you think they're going to go to jail if they get caught bringing it in? No, they're not.
Nope. Nope. And see,
And
that's
so that's a problem in Mississippi. And I moved. I know I probably made a lot of people mad by saying that, but that's the truth.
No,
I've
honey,
got state representatives I went to school with that will never get on board, and I don't understand. And I'm like, I just do not understand. But they don't mind reaching out for help.
isn't that a I'm gonna bite my tongue real hard because I don't want to say what I really want to
I've had
say.
law enforcement. I have had law enforcement in Mississippi get help from us. So it's like, yeah, it's a double standard 100% in Mississippi of who you are and what rank you have in the state.
And that's
So
so sad.
that breaks my heart for people in Mississippi. Harper Grace, I've been following that little girl since I was in Mississippi. And I've even
Mm-hmm.
reached out to them since I've been in Colorado. And I was like, come up here, we'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
And, their problem, they don't have the money to up and leave. And they got, people don't understand when you leave and give up everything you've got to try to go to save your child. I've done it for myself. I cannot imagine it being one of my kids.
I
I just can't.
I
So,
agree.
yeah, I feel so sorry for her, and I'm just mad at Mississippi that that little girl has yet to get any life-saving medicine that her fought so diligently, and for them to shoot that bill down when they wrote it, legislatures should be ashamed of themselves for what they done to that family.
I agree. Yes, they really should be ashamed. It's her story is one of the most profound about the Mississippi legislature because it kind of gives you an idea of what they think of us. And it's if they don't even think that much about a child, why are they willing to help me? They're not. They're not. And it's heartbreaking.
They're not. And that kind of goes back to like I started this with, when you're in the hospital and you're sick, people just don't understand.
Mhm.
They don't want to understand. They know they've got money, they've got the power to do what they want to. They can hop on a plane, they can come to Colorado, they can grab some medicine and be back in Mississippi before dark.
Yep.
And nothing would ever be done with these people. But I also know I got a good friend that lives in up close to Pontotoc.
Mhm.
He's up in Union County actually. But he was a cop, and he got caught growing some to like for himself.
Right.
And people think he didn't serve his prison time, and now he's like probably bashed in his hometown for what he done. And I feel so sorry for him because he had family that was high up in ranking, and these people were like brought into and was interrogated for hours and days, girl, stuff they didn't even know anything about. And I was like, so many lives get disrupted over a plant.
It's
And
sickening.
in Mississippi, you got so many people that, and I've heard this since I've been here, and I've got Southern Baptists in my family, so I understand it 100%. Pamela is a drug. We can't condone it. Um, and I told them, I said, but you call yourself a Christian, and you're not supposed to pass judgment on people. And my Bible states that God put all food here on this earth for us to nourish and heal our bodies. And he
Yes.
didn't say cannabis was bad, leave it out. And so how you call yourself a preacher, but your Bible don't read like mine. So
Exactly.
I have to question that, So, and then, like I say, I've had so many people follow me on Facebook and see that I was on my deathbed when I left Mississippi, and now I'm up here and doing so much better. And I can tell you something you may know about this, but I actually decided to move to Colorado because I came back and forth for a year. I traveled back and forth for a year
Oh wow.
before I made the move. And the day I made the move, I loaded up everything in my car. And at that time, I had already been coming back and forth to Colorado for a year. So I had medicine from Colorado on me.
Right.
And I get stopped in Kansas for my third time Well, third time was the charm. I was literally smoking a joint when he pulled me over.
Oh
So
gosh.
he's like, "Why do I smell cannabis coming from your car?" And I'm like, I held the little roach up. And I'm like, "Because I was smoking one when you pulled me over." And he's like, "You have marijuana in your car?" And it like turned into this big thing, girl. I ended up going to jail in Trago County, Kansas. Um,
For medication.
Scared to death because, right, I was actually en route to have my leg amputated at the time, so it's paid a lot of money. And I found out that when they got me to jail, I was so scared because I'm in a strange place, strange state. Um, to me, life couldn't have got any worse at that moment. So
Right.
they take me in, and he finds my papers for surgery on the seat of my car, and he comes in and he goes, "So you're en route to surgery?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got a blood clot. I got to go." It was a blood clot to be removed. And I said, "They called me, and so I'm on my way." And he's like, "They confiscated everything they had, seized my vehicle, and then told me to call my daughter to come pick me up."
Oh my
And
gosh.
the daughter in Colorado. And so I call her, and it's like midnight. And I'm like, "I need you to come get me." And then they come in while I'm on the phone with her and tell me they're going to give me my car back. They're going to release me on my own recognizance. I'm really kind of not sure what's going on, but I'm
Skeptical.
willing to take the deal and go. So
Yes.
I get out of there, and I get to Colorado, and I'm like, start telling some of the activists I know what happened. And they're like, "Girl, if they let you go, you ain't got nothing to worry about. You'll be okay." Girl, 30 days later, I got indicted by the state of Kansas and was facing 15 years for my medicine.
Oh my
And
God.
they drug that out for 8 months. I know you're not supposed to call the DA when you're in trouble, but I think I stayed on the phone more with the DA than I did anybody. I'm like, "What are you going to do to me? Where are you going to send me?" I was scared. And I ended up getting Michael Minardi out of Florida. He's the one winning all the cases in Florida. So
Yes.
a friend of mine reached out to Michael and told him about my case, and Michael called me and agreed to take the case. And he actually made a phone call. I'd taken it that morning, and by 4 o'clock that afternoon, I don't know what he said in his phone call, but I love him for whatever he said, because at 4 o'clock that afternoon, Kansas called me and told me that they were bringing all my felonies down to a misdemeanor for me just to pay my fine and be done with the state of Kansas. So I done 6 months probation with them and 6 months unsupervised probation. I didn't pee in no cup for them. I never went to court or anything like that. But
That's so
it was
good.
like, yeah, I was really scared during all that. So
I
it,
can imagine.
and even like, if I think about going back to Mississippi, it's like I don't want to drive because I don't know that I ain't dropped a roach or something in my vehicle. And it's like, ooh, the last
Exactly.
thing I need to do. And actually, the last time I was in Mississippi, I was in Philadelphia, doing a little get together there to educate people on the benefits of cannabis, and had a DEA agent bust up in on my meeting.
Oh
And
gosh.
he actually walks in the room and he goes, "We're not having this here." And I'm like, "Excuse me? We're not having what? A conversation?"
Because that's what we're doing.
And so it really turned out to be quite the conversation between me and him. And he actually at one point threatened to take me to the hospital to drug test me and threatened to file charges on me. And I told him, "You can do that, but you better pray I got something in my system when you do." And so it he actually told me about a case in Mississippi where he is also highway patrol for North Mississippi. And he
Okay.
said that he had worked a wreck, and that the two people involved in this wreck, I guess they kind of, both of them kind of crossed the line and hit head on.
Hmm.
And he said that the woman involved in this wreck was seriously hurt. Both parties were. But when
Wow.
she gets out of the hospital, she is charged with causing the wreck because she tested positive for cannabis in the hospital. And he told me he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt She was not under the influence when she had the wreck.
Right.
But he was going to court and say she was. I put that video all over Facebook trying to find out who that girl was because I could have got that girl out of trouble based on that video.
Yep.
And I could not find out. It's like I Googled so many, and when you Google wrecks and stuff in Mississippi in certain places, thousands of things show up. So I could never pinpoint who this girl was, but I'm saddened to think that that girl is serving time in the state of Mississippi for a wreck for being under the influence when she was not under the influence.
Because cannabis stays in your system for an extremely long time. So people that don't know about cannabis may not understand that you can test positive even when you're not directly under the influence. I'm talking weeks later, sometimes months later. It depends on how much you use cannabis and how often as to how long it stays in your system. So just because it's in your system is not indicative of you being under the influence at that moment in time when you're tested.
Well,
So,
another thing is 5 nanograms is your
mhm,
limit on being, for them to say you're under the influence.
yes.
Um, I would not be scared to say, I haven't had my nanograms tested. I've actually made a joke about it and say, I need to have my nanograms tested. Um, because I would really like to know what my nanograms are. I would not be scared to say my nanograms probably running 50 and 60.
Right.
And that's on a daily basis. But am I under the influence? No.
Nope.
I do a lot of research studies here on cannabis. Like we done one here a while back driving with people that consume cannabis. And one
Uh-huh.
of the questions was, would you get in a vehicle with someone that had consumed cannabis? And I'm
Yes.
like, maybe. I don't know though. Does that person consume cannabis on a
A
regular
regular
basis?
basis.
It's their first joint ever. And
Major difference.
makes a big difference. So, um, we actually have this breathalyzer test now that can tell if you've consumed. But my understanding is within 24 hours that you've consumed. So you could
It's
consume at night and have to get up and go to the emergency room and get stopped on the way to the emergency room, and you're under the influence.
exactly.
And that, yeah, that scares us all around here that actually consume, because we do know if we're in an accident, they're going to point the finger at us first. It's
Yes.
got to be our fault. So even though we're the we drive the slowest and we're the most cautious because we don't want to get in a wreck. But yeah,
Yes.
we take the blame for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely crazy. Well, we've been talking now for about a good hour, so I'm going to try to wrap things up here. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything I haven't covered that you feel like people in Mississippi need to hear, legislators need to hear? Anything else you want to add?
At this point in time, um, I think enough states have legalized it, and we have proved over and over again, even without research, just the patients here in Colorado that have came, um, and what we have proven that cannabis actually does. And so I feel like if the legislatures don't want to give up big pharma, and I understand them not wanting to lose their over here that taking care of us for so many years, but we do know there is a natural way that
Yes.
doesn't have for us to take care of our bodies, and we need to quit putting patients through chemo and radiation. Chemo has no effect on cancer 98% of the time. You can Google it, you can research it. That's just statistics. But we are still paying doctors cash money to prescribe this, and as long as they're getting that kickback from it, they're going to prescribe it. That's what they went to school to do, to learn how to do. That's what they're going to do. That's all they know.
Yes.
And when we start making ourselves better with cannabis, they start losing patients. Pharmaceuticals starts losing their people, and so we're starting to cut into a lot of bank accounts because
Hmm.
we don't need them anymore.
Exactly.
So I think that we need to have that as an option.
Hmm.
Um, you can keep your pills as an option also if that's what people want, but at least give dying people a voice to medicate themselves and when the doctors can't treat you anymore, you know, there is a right you have as an individual to treat yourself the way you see fit. And Mississippi is standing in the way of people having that right.
They
Um,
absolutely are.
I think it's time they either step up and get on board or
Yes.
step aside
Yes.
and let people live. Quit. You got a lot of blood on your hands, Mississippi.
That is the truth. That is the bottom line. There is blood on hands that will be answered for. It will come around. Karma drives a train. I've said that from day one. Don't ever think that you won't need cannabis, because I promise you, somebody has a sense of humor and you will end up needing that cannabis and you will have to eat your words. It's going to happen.
Right.
But I thank you, Miss Pamela, for joining us. I know, like I said, you're sitting there with your foot hanging down, and all I can think is that it's just constantly swelling, and it probably doesn't feel good. So I want to end it, but I want to thank you. You are a huge activist. You have done so much for this community, and to still care about what happens in Mississippi, you don't know how much that means to me. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not easy to get on and talk about hard stuff, but thank you for being vulnerable and open. And I look forward to knowing you for the rest of my life. I can't wait to start whooping up on some people with you. I feel like we would be great cannabis advocates side by side. So thank you, Pamela. I
Thank you
hope you're
for everything you're doing in Mississippi. I know what it takes to stand up right now with things not being legal. I can only imagine what you are going through. So kudos to you for being that strength that Mississippi needs right now.
Yes, ma'am. Somebody's got to do it. I mean, and I tell people all the time, I'm just doing what I think is right. I'm not a hero. I'm doing what's right. And I don't care who I have to fight in the process to prove that I'm right. You prove it every day when you get
One
up
of
out of
these
bed.
days they're going to wake up and went, oh my goodness, I was so wrong. And so many people suffered because of what I thought. So
And I'm
we're
going to have
waiting.
my lawn chair waiting, watching.
We're waiting for that woke day. I promise you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you do. You have a wonderful day. Go put that foot up, please. And thank you, and take care of yourself.
Okay, I lost you online there, but okay, thank you.
All right. Bye, honey.
Bye, dear.